Welcome back to another episode of More People, More Problems. Okay, as I was doing that, I realized I always sing the intro, and it's like my stick now when
I like
I
it.
should never be singing. So I'll just say that again: more people, more problems.
No, too
Good.
serious,
Yeah, okay.
too
Somewhere in
serious.
the middle. Anywho, with your hosts, Chelsea and myself, Brittany, we welcome you back. Excited to have you. Today, we are going to be talking about stress and how it affects our lives every day. But before we do that, don't forget to jump on, like the photos, like the reels. Hopefully, you're enjoying them. We're starting to give a bit more content in the reels, which is fun. But definitely reach out with questions, thoughts, any of the good stuff. We love to interact with you. And Chelsea, I'm going to throw it over to you to jump right into this stressful topic. Just
Right. So today we're going to talk about stress, and I hope a lot of folks are going to come away with some good pointers on how to manage stress, whether you're at home or in the workplace, and maybe to understand yourself and the connection between your brain, your body, your work. So, how is stress presenting itself in the everyday for people? I think it's important also to mention that like you can't live stress free. Like that's not possible. It's actually not good for you. You do need to have some stress in your life. There are different types of stress. There's adaptive stress, which is like stress on your body in terms of cheering for your favorite sports team, right? So you're getting that stressful situation or meeting, a love interest.
That's like that
Versus
good stress where you get the
it's good stress.
butterflies.
It's good stress, and you should have that
Yeah.
stress. And then you have the maladaptive stress, which is the burnout, which is the constant drain, like from work, for example. So I think that it's important to say we do need to experience some stress, but we'll talk a little bit after as well about the acute versus the chronic stress and
Yeah.
what that does to your body.
Because that's my understanding. When I first started learning about stress, my first question when I was talking, I don't know if it was a coach or I was in a workshop or something, but I was like, why do we need to be stressed? Like, where does stress come from in the body? And they brought it back to, I mean, eons ago on like how when you're hunting for food, like how when you are in moments, the stress is good. What it's actually doing is igniting that fight or flight. And
Mhm.
so, if you didn't have stress, you wouldn't, in a moment when an animal is coming to eat you, care. You
Okay.
wouldn't, you might just sit there and get eaten. And instead, that acute moments of stress, what it does is it releases, I don't know what the hormone is. You probably know it off the top of your head.
Serotonin.
Serotonin, that's it. And what it does is it takes the blood away from certain parts of your body, such as your heart and different organs, and puts it into your brain. And it makes you function faster. It makes you be able to think faster in the moment, be able to run away and actually deal with the moment at hand, which is good. It's good when we do that at one time. But when it happens all the time, when it's chronic stress, as you're talking about, which I think has become a thing through evolution, it becomes really dangerous on your body because it has a lot of negative side effects.
Mm.
And so to me, I always look at it like, okay, we needed this. So there's some good things. So let's take a moment and acknowledge stress can be good. Like it's not all bad. But now, how do we fight that double edged sword, which is when it's bad, how do we bring it back? You know?
Yeah, exactly. And I just want to correct myself. I said serotonin. I should have said cortisol. Made a mistake
Yes,
there.
cortisol.
So
Yes.
cortisol, and I want to talk about that for a second because we have these four main chemicals in our body, right?
Yeah.
That are part of everything we do and how we feel and how we show up, right? So you've got cortisol. Britt just talked about that. That's your stress hormone. That's the distress hormone, right? So bad, cortisol, bad. You've got dopamine, which is the pleasure hormone, which is like the quick hits of pleasure. And when I say that, like, people have those sayings like you're on a dopamine high. It's like akin to being a meth addict, for example. Like it's so pleasurable for a quick second, but it's easily gone as well, right? You've got your serotonin, which is released when you're achieving something, when you're proud of something, when you're having a really like meaningful conversation with someone. And then lastly, of oxytocin, which you want to strive for. That's the love drug, right? Like that's like when you
Ah,
go and hug your child or you hug your puppy or your spouse. That's the chemical that is getting released. And
and these are just the 4 hormones that are always getting released in our body, or are these the 4 hormones that get released in stress?
in different
Okay.
types of situations. So it's really important to understand how those chemicals are interacting and how to increase the release of the selfless hormones, which are serotonin and oxytocin. And I'll tell you why afterwards. And maybe how to decrease necessarily, for sure, cortisol.
Well,
Cortisol
how to
spike,
manage it. Yeah.
how to manage it, but what I want to say is, yes, you should have cortisol spikes. That's important. You've just told us why, but you shouldn't be constantly spiking cortisol. That is really, really bad for you. And that is not only bad for your mind, your body, physical health, it's terrible on your mental health. We'll talk about how it affects workplace and your productivity as well afterwards, but also decreasing the dopamines, because those are just those quick hits of a rush that aren't actually linked to connection with people, or long-term satisfaction. It's a very acute type of drug.
And once again, correct me if I'm wrong, you need dopamine hits to create that feedback loop of, "I'm gonna do this more." We're talking about working out. When you
Absolutely.
do, like, a HIIT class, I'm assuming no one likes it. What they like is the dopamine hit once you're done it.
Yep.
That's the thing
The
that
rush.
keeps you coming back. And so there is this like short loop of, okay, this is reinforcing. I like this. I'm going to do it again. I think it gets dangerous when you only rely on that. So it's nothing is black and white. It's all interconnected. But I think that's important. When you have too many, when you rely solely on dopamine hits, it can get really dangerous because you're not actually building for the long term. It's always these short loops.
Short loops, you want to build for your serotonin,
Mhm.
which is why, and I'll say why a lot of people who are depressed, who have anxiety, are on medications that are called SSRIs, which are serotonin reuptake serotonin selective serotonin reuptake initiators, or SSRI. I can't remember what the I is for a second. Um, but anyways, that helps to increase serotonin for people who are depressed and who actually need support to increase that. And that's what is that more of that selfless chemical in your
Yeah.
body that you want to work towards. So I think when we talk about stress and being constantly stressed and that chronic stress, that means that your body is constantly spiking cortisol.
Yeah.
Always. It's ready for fight or flight. Now, think about that for a second. If you are always ready for fight or flight, then you are not paying attention to the facts, or you're not being present in the moment. You are constantly being drained. And that can happen at work, and that can result in that burnout that you're experiencing at work, that overwhelming feeling of being at work. So it's important for people to get their focus more on facts, get their focus more on being around people, which helps increase oxytocin. So that's actually really important, and it kind of ties into the whole being around people, seeing those people you're around as your friend versus your foe. If you're constantly looking at other people you're interacting with, engaging with at work, you see them as a threat. And you're too focused on the threats to focus on the facts and the situation and to making those connections with people.
Just to jump in with a few things. One is I do think that high stress and constant stress can be happening in any area of life,
For sure.
depending on what you're dealing with and how you're dealing with it. And so I think we're going to focus more probably in the work environment, but I hope any listener hearing this will also translate like this might be life, and I think that the same tips apply if you're experiencing chronic stress in your relationship, in your home life, in like whatever segment of that you choose. It's the same parallels. The
Hmm.
second thing is, I'll just be really honest, when I was at Shopify I was 100% experiencing chronic stress, and the weird part about it was, and this wasn't anyone pushing this on me, I was almost proud of it. It was a badge of honor. I was like, "Look at all the things I can handle. Look at how stressed I am." It showed that I had so much work to do, that I was on top of everything, that I was multitasking. If I didn't have that level of stress always, I felt like I was failing. I felt like I wasn't busy enough. I felt like I didn't have enough on my plate. And it became this, ironically, this like positive view of what stress was until I broke.
Right.
And I highlight that because for anyone listening that's like, I don't even know if I'm stressed, or what does it look like? Or maybe stress is good. It keeps me on my toes. It does when it's moments. It
Mhm.
really doesn't when it's all the time. You really need to take a look and understand how you're feeling, what's going on, and at what level do you think you're at. And so I want to just talk before we get into solutions and how you need to balance it out. It's like, what are some triggers that you can start to tell if you're in that chronic stress? And so, one for me, which we've talked about before, is I was getting sick all the time. And that's because my immune system was so low due to chronic stress. And what it does is chronic stress like is known to just drop your immune system because it
Yes.
isn't actually treating that part of your body. It's taking away from that to manage this fight or flight. It's taking away and saying,
Exactly.
no, we need to put more energy. We need to put more blood flow in these other areas. So you don't get that there. And so if you find you're getting sick a lot, trigger.
Think about
Another one is digestive system or like muscle tensions. If you find that you're really sore all the time for no good reason, that should be a trigger. Or if
exactly.
you find that your stomach is always off, you're having weird intestinal issues, that should be another trigger. Respirational issues, that would be a big one. And mental health, I think, is a huge one too, because chronic stress can have, as you just mentioned, a significant impact on your health, um, whether that's anxiety, depression, or a myriad of other mental health issues. I think when they're amplifying, that should be a trigger to say, am I going through any type of chronic stress? And it could be also little things like if you find your memories being affected, you can't concentrate, you're not able to make
Mhm.
decisions. I think what you just said is like when you can't look at the facts, it's because you're in this heightened state of fight or flight. You can't actually take the time. In, like we just said, historical, if you took the time to look at all the facts, you would be eaten by a lion. And so it's not meant for that point. But in that stance, we know that great decision making, creative thinking can't be done in that same stance. So I hope some of those triggers, and I don't know if you'd add any else, just highlight, am I in acute or is it more prolonged
Right.
chronic stress?
And well, just to like recap a sec on what you said, which you said really brilliantly, is when you're in chronic stress mode, your sympathetic nervous system is always engaged. And when you're in your sympathetic nervous system, it's suppressing those other important parts of your body, of your system, like your digestive system, your immune system. It's telling those you're not important right now. I'm dealing with this threat, right? So, hence why Brittany said they gave a very tangible example of I was always sick all the time. I remember when I was going through a period, and it was about a 6 month period a couple of years back, I was throwing up every single day. I couldn't understand why. My body was always on edge. Even just, I was hungry, I was starving. The second I would start eating, I would gag and I couldn't eat anymore. And I realized that there was a very big underlying issue that I was needing to deal with. Um,
I
I
remember witnessing that, and it was so scary
yeah,
because we didn't have the tools to realize that it was stress.
no,
Like, I remember you were just searching for answers. I was searching for answers for you because it was scary. And it is crazy what stress can do to your body. I
it's
know people
crazy.
where like their kidneys have stopped working, like they're going down because of stress. I know people that have had dormant autoimmune diseases that through periods of chronic stress came online.
Mm.
When I got my hypothyroidism and Hashimoto's through a period of chronic stress, would I have gotten it if not? I don't know. Like I hope that people hearing this don't do what I did back in the day, which think of stress like a badge of honor. Like it means you're important. It means that you're doing something right. You If it's chronic, you're not. I can tell you it's going to blow up in your fucking face.
Absolutely. And we know like stress has physical impacts on your body. Stress, chronic stress can kill you. Like because
Yeah.
think of what Britt just said about all these autoimmune issues and these illnesses, these ailments that come up through chronic stress because your body is not fighting off and engaging what it needs to engage when you're constantly looking at the threat. And I want to take this back for a second and talk about work in terms of stress. So then the impacts it has on our body, but how does it impact our productivity? Well, I mean, I think it's obvious. We've just said that there's a lot of physical impacts which can then contribute to poor mental health, but we also have the impact of stress that comes on in the workplace due to not feeling safe. And we've talked about Maslow's hierarchy of needs and circle of trust, for example. And I think a lot of people do not feel safe in their organizations and feel stress when there isn't a level of trust in that organization. When those feelings of dopamine and cortisol are constantly at the heart of the organization versus the selfless chemicals of serotonin and oxytocin, where people are engaging with each other, where people are looking for culture fit, where people are, um, in the more state of the positivity. So I think that we see a lot of stress bringing itself out in organizations where there's no trust with the leadership, where we don't have those examples. And a lot of it has to do with control. Do you have any control over you or what's going to happen to you? And for sure, executives have more control. For example, you have more agency on what happens within your organization. Sometimes no. So it really just depends on the organization. But employees is where we see a lot of mental burnout, a lot of mental health issues, a lot of stress because a lot of the time they have no control. Their circle of safety um, is less so in terms of the support that they're getting from their leadership or their ability to change what's happening to them. And I think that that translates into stress, into that burnout feeling.
Yeah, I think stress comes up when there's a dissonance between expectation and belief or control in output. And so for me, which I was at an executive role or at a leadership role throughout, my stress came from the magnitude of what needed to be accomplished, the expectations that others put on me, but also the expectations that I put on myself and my ability to complete that. I didn't have enough time in the day. I didn't have the skill set to do it at some points. I didn't have the right team. But I knew that if I didn't get that done, the consequences were enormous and I put it all on myself. And so it was yes, control, but it also was the belief of could I do what was expected? And there was a dissonance there. And I think what you're talking about is individual. And I think it's really important because there's a role to play, which is the organization. If you're an employee and you don't feel trusted, you don't feel empowered, you don't feel like you're a part of things, there would be a dissonance between expectations and what you're able to accomplish, which creates
Mhm.
stress. But I
Yep.
think that there's a slightly different lens depending on where you're at. And I guess my tweak would be stress gets removed when you feel like you can control and overcome
Yep.
the situation. And it
Right.
gets amplified when you feel like you're not. But to me, it's more that dissonance between expectation of whether it's on you or self versus what you can accomplish.
Absolutely. And I think it's important for everyone to remember like stress and productivity are on a bell curve. Like it's going to transcribe no matter what. The higher levels of stress that you're experiencing, that your employees are experiencing on the day to day, is going to mean less productivity, not only less more issues for them, more issues for their health, their mental health, their physical health, and also more issues for the organization as well. So I think that we need to be really, really mindful as leaders, the type of culture that we create in our organizations, the support that we provide people, and that circle of safety, that circle of trust is incredibly important because it is a major contributor.
Yeah, and I think you're getting to, we've talked a lot so far about how dangerous chronic stress can be, and how good acute stress can actually be. Like, let's just give a really good example. Let's say you're about to go present to a bunch of your peers or bosses that you really care about what they think, and you get nervous, and you're going to go in and you're like, I hope I do a good job. You're getting stressed out. That's a moment of acute stress. What it's going to do is drive greater clarity of like what you want to get done, better range of like what your brain and body is going to do in that moment. But it should dissipate right after. And
Mhm.
you should be able to calm down. And other things, like you said, dopamine, probably serotonin from being together will come into effect, and that will give you a longer range rush. The chronic stress is if you're on edge all the time. You're going into this meeting, but you get out, and the next thing you're worried about and extra stressed about is getting to the next meeting on time or completing the next, task you have, and it never ends. You go to bed, you probably can't sleep, but you're going home and thinking about the million other things. And so if you're in that mind frame, it's like, well, how do we solve this? Because that obviously isn't good long term, what like we've talked about. I think what you're highlighting is there's a really big role that the company and organization and leadership have to play in this. I also want to highlight there's a massive role as an individual that you need to play in this, because as much as the organization can set it up, it is such an individual sport, an individual direction of how to get better about getting out of that chronic stress. And there's some things you can do. But before we get into the individual, I feel like you have more thoughts and views on the organization and leadership. So why don't we start there, and then we'll end with the individual of what you can do.
Well, in terms of the organization and leadership, I think it's important to have the conversations about this and actually help your employees to have good habits around their work as well that are going to help to reduce stress. And I think about this one because I've always considered myself to be this multitasker. Oh, I'm a multitasker. Look at me. I'm amazing. I'm doing 15 things at once and look how good I am. Um, Actually, nobody multitasks. Like it's like 2% of the population can actually multitask. What most people are actually doing is task switching. It's actually really bad for you. It's actually really bad for your brain as well. Um, and it just means like you're
This could be
shifting
a
from
whole other episode
it could be
on
a whole other
multitasking
episode.
and whether or not we should. Yeah.
And it's so interesting, but it's not giving your time being in the moment for something. So it's constantly task switching between you've got 15 screens open on your laptop, you're writing this email, you're listening to a meeting, you're not actually listening to that meeting, you're attempting to write a report here, you've got them all open. It's actually really bad for you, and it actually is detrimental to your brain. So, what most people should be doing and what organizations should be doing is encouraging people to be present in the tasks they're doing this by task blocking, spending 10 minutes doing this, spending 10 minutes doing that, spending 10 minutes doing that. And being present and grounded in what you're doing at that time, because then you can actually reach that sense of accomplishment afterwards of like, okay, I got this finished, I was present in that meeting with this person, I went and had a difficult conversation with someone, I was successfully able to task block, but also building in small breaks in between all of those things. um
I love
Organization.
this. Sorry to interject. I love this because it brings me back, and I know exactly when I thought I was a multitasking queen. I could do everything. And what ended up really happening was didn't even have an office at the time. My desk was a revolving door. And it was like, yes to you, no to you. Let's figure this out. Do da da da. And it was all of these things. But at the end of the day, I remember always thinking, I got nothing done.
Yeah.
I like put out fires, but I have all this work to do, and I was more stressed for the next day. And I remember when my coach started working with me on a simple task, which is, excuse me, write a list of what needs to get done today. It should really only be like max 3 things. If they're small, they can be more, but like what are 3 things that need to get done, and block the time off, and then you're allowed to put out fires and be a revolving door because that
Oh,
needs
it
to happen,
happens.
but those things need to get done, and the sense of accomplishment, the full circle of it at the end of the day would actually bring some of those hormones you talk about, the accomplishment, the feeling good, all those things, and it would just relieve stress without even realizing it
Yeah.
was exactly what you're talking about now. I just thought I was good at making lists, you
No,
know?
but who
So
doesn't love a list and crossing something off of
well,
your
and
list?
this is why.
It feels so good. The little bit of accomplishment, which is that serotonin kind of giving you a little burst saying, "Good job, Chels. You just crossed another thing off your list." Now, I don't know that I agree with only having 3 things. I'll even put on small things that are even just like I forgot, like I need to send an email to someone about their
Yeah.
start date, or like I'll put them on. I feel great every time I cross things off of my list, big or small, so they're on there.
Well,
But I
maybe
think
segment it, you know what I mean? Like, here's the major things,
top
here's, like, some
priority.
smaller there's ways to do it, but I think the moral of that is humans can't multitask, it's a myth, and so what you need to do is if you're gonna multitask, give yourself a time block of, "Here's where I'm gonna attack multiple things," and these like, be specific about how you wanna spend your time block, and leadership can help with that by getting really aligned on what is critical to get done and help support to time block.
And let me say something also that's so incredibly important that I would have laughed at you at like a year ago. Because again, like you, I considered myself to be the multitasking queen. I can do anything, I can do a million things at once, and I'm going to be the best ever. Is taking breaks between those times, between that blocking. And that can be 10 minutes, but it could even be 1 minute. And I'll tell you like why this is really helpful. And a lot of um, doctors do this. A lot of people who exercise the time blocking technique do this. Stop, breathe, and just be for a minute. Stop, close your eyes, take a breath, present yourself, ground yourself in the moment. Now you can do this for a moment, in between things if you've got a lot of things to do, or stop and do nothing else. Do personal things, do whatever for 5 minutes. Okay, it is going to increase your neural consumption between your tasks by like a million fold. I
Well,
tell
and
you,
you know
it's important.
why? It's because when you are in stress and chronic, you're in your sympathetic, which
Yep,
is that fight or flight.
bring
And
it
what we
back.
want to do is go to your parasympathetic, which
Exactly.
is our smoother muscles. It's how we deal with stress. It's our nervous system and it's pulling you down. And this is that individual, but there's essentially micro mindfulness is what you're doing. You're taking a minute to get back in your body to remove the cortisol to go down so that when you go into the next thing, you're not at that heightened
Exactly.
reactionary moment. I love
And
that.
and I've been listening to this a lot through a couple of other podcasts that have been really interesting, doctors and neuroscientists. And they say when you're in that stress moment, when you're in that fight or flight, it's your amygdala that's being
Yeah.
engaged. Like it's emotional, you're irrational, you're angry, you're like, and it's funny because I just thought about this yesterday, a moment I had where I just vented something out, and it would like there were so many other ways, and they said, you got to take that, stop it for a second, and bring all of these thoughts to your prefrontal cortex, which is where you're going to logically deal with. And now, what do I do with this?
Yes.
And now, how do I manage this in a reasonable way? You got to stop the amygdala from taking over and being all about the emotions and the craze and all those things, and bring it to the front of your brain and go, okay, this might have happened because of this, but I'm going
Yeah.
to go ahead and I'm going to take these actions, and I can manage this, right? Bring it back into your
And by the
control. It's
way,
so important.
so hard to do. Like,
It's so
let's just highlight, like, you just said it and you're so accurate. That is what you want to do. But it is so hard to do
I'm
in the
not there yet.
moment. And
I
this is
thought about it
why
for sure.
Well, and this is why there's practices you can do, which we'll get into later, about how to do that regularly so that when you're in the moment, you're more primed to do it. It's like a muscle that you've worked. If you're doing bicep curls all the time, the day you have to pick up a child and do this, you can do it because you're stronger. And so we'll get into that, but I think it's critical. And it also just made me think of a story. I was talking to a friend of mine last night who has, I think, like a 6 week old baby. And she was talking about how it's been obviously so crazy and stressful, and how she got into a dispute, like just a fight with her husband. And I was like, clearly, yeah, because of what you just said, though. It's like you're not sleeping, you're highly stressed, you're responsible for this new baby that's, you don't know what to do. You're learning, like you are in chronic stress in
Yeah,
this time. And so, of course, your person that you love that is next to you, you're going to go to that fight or flight, emotional, irrational annoyance instead of being able to bring it here. And so there's going to be times in life where that is it and you just got to survive. But it's like time boxing, even that, to be like, maybe that's a week, maybe that's a day. And then you need to bring it back to that front cortex where you can think, where you can have
exactly.
logic, where you can refresh and bring the stress down. I
And
think it's
baby
so
steps.
critical.
Guys, baby steps with this. Like Britt
Yeah.
said, I just did this yesterday and I only thought about it an hour later, going, oh, God, Chelsea, like a bit much, settle down. But I thought about it an hour later, and maybe next time I'll think about it half an hour later. And maybe
Yeah.
next time I'll think about it right after I do that. And maybe the time after that, or in a year, God knows how long it'll take me, I might think about it in the moment while I'm doing it and stop myself. Or I might think about it before I have the urge to kind of go a little bit nutty and
Yeah.
out of control and blow off steam. Maybe I will. And it takes time and practice. So just don't think like, listen, guys, I did it. I hit the jackpot. I went from amygdala to prefrontal cortex. Bam. Like, here we go.
Yeah,
And
no, not the
no,
case.
yeah, your body wants to do that. And you have to attempt to control. It's
Yeah.
not easy.
I think another thing, just going back to like organization, what we can do, you spoke about trust. I think this goes into that, but I think the biggest stressor for individuals in the organization, once again, in my opinion, it's unrealistic, sorry, expectations. And so as a leader, as an organization, if you can be really clear around the beliefs and behaviors that lead to people striving in the organization, otherwise known as your culture, talk about it,
Yeah,
name it, be clear about it. Because
for
when you
sure.
are consistent in your expectations as an organization, that builds trust, that builds security, that builds an understanding of how to show up. And if you're not showing up, it's really clear to move away from that. And there's no surprises. And then on a level deeper, when you're a leader, being really clear about, here are the expectations. And in conversation, if that is unrealistic, let's have a conversation on why. Is that because this person isn't skilled or experienced? Is it because they're slacking? Is it because I've set unrealistic expectations and I need to get it down a bit so that we can meet? I don't know. But having that conversation and getting super aligned about where it is that you both think it should be, and then setting them up to be able to accomplish that will, I promise you, bring that stress level down because it's clear, it's there, there's no dissonance. And even if there is, there should be a little bit, and that's healthy and that's good because that will bring moments of spurts. But when it's too big, chronic stress pops in. Of course,
Absolutely.
you're trying and you will never achieve.
So, in your opinion, Brett, what are a couple of other tips or tricks to either manage stress or prevent that
I
kind of
don't think you can prevent stress. Let's just,
chronic stress
oh, I, so individually or organizationally?
individually?
Oh, okay. So I think individually, I think you need to first have a really good, like anything else, look at your life and ask yourself, like, do a little inventory check. Where am I? How
Okay.
am I doing? Um, and what do I need to do about it? TLDR, it's self awareness. I think
Hmm.
if you're not self aware, you can't change anything and you really can't grow from it. So I really think take a pause and, based on what you've heard so far, check in. Are
Yeah.
you experiencing chronic stress or not?
Can
From
I
there,
jump in on that though?
yep.
I just want a tip to link into that. If listen to your body. If your body is whispering to you, listen to it before it starts screaming to you, because that's so you know when you've gone too far. So listen to the whispers. Don't wait
And
for the
what would be
scream.
some of your whispers? Because I think earlier when we were talking about, like, immune system, like, you're sick, those are screams. So
Mhm.
what are the whispers?
Well, I think you have to look at your lifestyle. Like if we're talking about work, for example, if you're irritable constantly, you already find you're not really sleeping well, you know, digestion isn't great, like someone was like, "Oh, I go poo once every single day." And then it's like, "Oh, it's been a week now. I'm constipated." Sorry if that was TMI for people.
No, I think that's actually a really good one, to be
But
honest.
I know we all like to talk about those things as we get older, eh? But I think that those are some of the things that you should be thinking of, like,
You're not
what are the
sleeping.
whispers?
You've given up on habits that bring you joy. You are no longer taking care of yourself. Food, moving your body isn't important when it used to be. Um, Sleep, they say, is a big one. I will say for me, even at my most stressful times, I've slept like a baby.
Yeah,
That
you're
hasn't been
sleeping.
affected. And I
It's
only
normal
share
for you.
that because it's not one size fits all. If you're like, I'm not experiencing chronic stress, I sleep good. I used
There's
to tell
different things.
myself that. It's bullshit.
Yeah. There's different
Um,
things. That was always good for you
yeah,
regardless, so
yeah.
it
I
wasn't your
can sleep
thing.
like a rock wherever I am, whenever.
She's a
That's
sleeper,
great.
folks.
But I think there are these whispers, and it really is, to your point, are you more emotional? Are you at a heightened state of survival? Are you annoyed with everything? Are you like, these are the whispers that come in? And I think talking about how to get out of it, once again, it's like acknowledge and become self aware of where you were at, these triggers, these whispers, or these screams. And then I think the next one is like, just really important for me when I was going, what are some self care items that I can put back in my life that will help me focus on myself and also help with stress. For
Mhm.
me, a really good one was slow movement and working out. I
Okay.
remember I was talking to one of my coaches and I was really in a bout of chronic stress. And I was saying, I love my HIIT workouts. Like I'm doing spin classes, I'm doing all these things. And she stopped me and she's like, that's the worst thing you can be doing right now because your body in heightened stress is already in, like we said, that sympathetic nervous system of fight or flight.
Yep.
Guess what a HIIT class does? It's literally an
Cortisol.
extreme stress inducer. She's like, what you need to be doing is yoga. You need to be doing like movement, yes, because your body needs it, but slow movement where you can get in your head, where you can focus
Oh,
on breathing and
yep.
bring it back to your
Meditation
body.
and refocusing, being grounded,
A
rather
100.
than you spiking your cortisol during this and then getting your hit of dopamine right after.
And that's exactly what I was doing. I thought it was good, but it was the dopamine, and then I would go into more dopamine hits at work. By the way, this is why I thought stress was a badge of honor because there was this, I
Your
did
body
it,
was
I
tricking her.
accomplished.
Yeah, your
Yeah.
body was telling you, "This is great. Keep doing this. Keep going hard, 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 hard. I'm gonna give you a reward afterwards."
Yeah, 100%. So for me, the two actual best things was one, I looked for support. And really what that meant for me was I had really amazing coaches and therapists along my route that helped to put words to feelings and emotions and thoughts and to really process and have a conversation about it and build in tools that helped, which is my second one, which is I built in these micro mindfulness moments. And you spoke about one, which is taking whether it's 30 seconds or 5 minutes in between tasks. But I had to build up what that looked like for me. And what that looked like for me was really breathing and journaling. Those are the two things
Yes.
that helped the most. Um, the breathing was, I mean, there's so many different breathing techniques you
I
can do.
know. They say diaphragmatic breathing too, right? They say, like,
Yeah.
as a baby, babies diaphragmatic breathe, but then we kind of lose that breathing. We breathe with our chests rather than our bellies, so it's like that breathing, belly breathing, right?
Yeah. Well, and it's crazy because breathing is like the most essential thing that any human has. And we often overlook it and how critical it is. But
So
it's probably the best thing to manage stress because it brings you from that sympathetic, I can't sympathetic.
sympathetic to the
Uh,
para.
to the parasympathetic, which is like getting you into the different part of your brain, but also in your body. And
Yeah.
so the interesting thing about breathing is yes, you should do it when you're in stress, but you should actually do it like we talked about building muscle all the time. The better you are at doing it, if you take it in the morning, you decide to do your breath work, or every day you find a moment. What I would say is pair patterns. So, like, one of my coaches once said, when it brews, I breathe. And that was her moment that anytime she made a coffee, she would just do box breathing. So breathe in for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, breathe out through your mouth for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds.
Yeah.
And when it brewed, she breathed. And it was just like a pattern matching exercise so that she got really good about doing it. And so that taught her body how to pull out of it. And when she was in chronic stress, she could do it as well and it would build down. So pair it. Box breathing. There's so many ways. Ultimately, breathe. Like that is one of the easiest ways to do it. Journaling, like I said, for me was another way because what it did was it allowed me to really get into my head and thought and take some breaths while I really focused on important things. But
Mhm.
I think there's many ways. I mean, I'm looking at a loose leaf I have from just back in the day. There's other ways you can do it. Compassionate self touch. When you think about when you're a child and moments of fight or flight came over, it might be that your sibling stole your toy and you wanted to rage. Probably actually was acute stress in that moment of just like, fight or flight. You'd go cry to your mom and or your dad, and they might just like rub your shoulder and
Mhm.
it would soothe you. It
Right.
brings you back into your body. I think that compassionate self touch, whether however you want to do it, Chelsea, don't get dirty here. I think that's really key.
I'll
And
I'll jump in on that
yeah.
one for a quick sec, Britt, because I was in a workshop yesterday and it's similar to what the gal mentioned to us about having an anchor point. So
Mm,
anytime that something really, really great happens to you and you're getting that burst of serotonin, you've achieved something, you're with people, you're doing it together, choose an anchor point on your body that's appropriate to touch in a public
I
space.
love that you just said that so clear. That's appropriate to touch in a public
So
space.
funny. So it could be your wrist, could be your ankle, could be your earlobe, could be whatever, and rub that. Okay. And then when you're about to go into something difficult, a difficult conversation, a challenge, a presentation, you know it's going to be hard, press your anchor point
Yeah.
and rub your anchor point. Eventually, the pattern that will be building is every time you press your anchor point, you're going to get a hit of serotonin like you experienced when you were actually going through that burst in your brain. So I think that that's really important
That's
one.
so wild to me
Isn't it
that we
cool?
can build patterns in our brain to
Build
create
the
those
patterns
moments.
to release the chemicals. So if you're going and you're getting this great experience with your friends, with your family, so you've accomplished something at work, use your anchor point. Make sure you're rubbing that, get familiar with that, and then do it every time that you're about to go and do something hard. So
Yeah.
you give yourself those good chemicals to help you cope with it. So I think that that's really important. One thing I will say is like being with people, and I laugh about this because we've talked about hybrid a lot, like working remotely versus working
Yeah.
in office. But it is no lie that being with people, touching people appropriately, is important, and that releases oxytocin. And that's why, like, my brain always, when I'm upset, I want to go and hug my children because
Yeah.
I get so much oxytocin from hugging my children. And it doesn't mean I'm going to go to work and start hugging everyone, but they even say just like a light touch someone on their arm and like showing that physical proximity is going
Well,
to support this.
this is why they say having a best friend at work is so critical.
So critical. So
Because it
critical.
actually like, this ties into so many different episodes and topics we've talked about, because it really is important to have that human connection to be able to de-stress.
Of course.
And if you don't, if you feel alone, if you don't get that, then it just magnifies it instead of brings it down. Um, this also reminds me of something else where I get a lot of fight or flight stress from, and that's anything medical. I don't know if anyone relates to this, but I have a deep fear and actually reaction to anything medical. I go into fight or flight, and so much so that I faint. I go to like I just very primal in these moments. And I have learned a lot of techniques on how to bring my nervous system down and
Yeah.
go once again from here to here,
Yeah.
being the frontal and like parasympathetic.
You should try
And
this anchor point. Like, you
the
should
anchor
try that.
point is actually something I do. Another one is the 5 senses. And so you say, "Okay, what is something I can smell? What is something I can hear, I can touch, I can see, and I can taste?"
Mhm.
And going through those and looking around and doing it every time I get my blood taking, I do a breath exercise and I do the 5 senses. And it allows me to get a needle in my arm when I couldn't
Oh,
for a long
good
time.
for you.
And so I think it's really, really important to do this. I do want to conclude with like, listen, a lot of these things, I think some can be like, oh, they're hooky. Like we have to focus on our breath and our
You'd
senses
be
and our
shocked
anchor point.
how they work.
I know it's how our bodies work. There are things you can do that are very tactical, such as set boundaries, have clear alignment on what's expected,
Mhm.
have a conversation, seek professional help. But I
Sure.
think some of these things that we're talking about, there's science behind it, and it's truly
Maximum
how our
control
body
your
and
body.
brains work. And so try it. Like I really urge people to just give it a try.
The brain body connection is amazing when you start to understand it and see how you can kind of adjust and adapt based on what your body is doing. So it comes out in work, it comes out as a leader, it comes out at home, but there's so many techniques that people can kind of implement, not only as someone who's leading an organization, but someone who's an employee in an organization or a, friend, colleague, family
Yeah,
member.
and just on the body brain, another one that I remember now when you say that, it's talking about like mantras or like affirmations, which I'll be honest, I thought they were bullshit for a long time. But as I looked into the research, like our thoughts that we produce are what actually produce our feelings.
For sure.
And sometimes we think our feelings then produce our thoughts, but they go both ways. And so if you start having, a gratitude practice, or if you start to say, I have a mantra, it might be like, I can do this. Or maybe it's like, I'm a bright star, let me shine. Or maybe it's, I will not let stress like bring me down. You choose what it is, but repeating that thought,
Yeah.
whether
Write it
in
down.
moments, yeah,
Write it
write it
down.
down. That's my journaling
I
essentially.
love it.
This is why it's because your thoughts produce your feelings.
Yeah.
And so being able to do that, that's another great one that can really help when we get into these heightened stress long-term moments.
And just like closing on that note, I think that's where some people think this is super corny, but putting something out into the universe, the universe, the universe will provide. Like, you'll be shocked how often you visibly saying something, physically, visibly, you saying something out loud, writing something down,
Yeah.
grounding it, and being clear about it, you'll be surprised how you can manifest.
Well, like the crazy thing is it's the universe, but it's really at its core you believing and
Exactly.
acting in a way that your feelings resonate with these thoughts. That's why, like attracts like, meaning when you put it out there, that's going to pull it back in. Anyways, we are going very, very
I know we're
woo-woo,
so
but
deep
I
in.
love it. And I think it's actually so critical, especially when we talk about stress. So critical.
Amazing. Shall we de-stress now and talk about work?
Another technique we commonly use. Actually, this one's not a healthy one. I used to do this one way too
No,
often.
we're not chronically stressed. We're just like having a little cute buzz right now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There you go. Okay, we'll be
Do it.
right back.
We're
And
back.
cheers. Oh, we tag teamed it. I was going to say cheers, and we're back.
And we're back. And a cheers to you. Here we go. We're both drinking a rosé,
Mine's actually a cocktail, but yes, you're drinking a rosé because you're going to do the wine review.
the wine review. But we've probably already done this one before.
We're
It's
getting
open.
sloppy
I've
with the
drunk a
wine.
lot of it. Drunk a bunch last night. Just FYI. And here we go again. But we've probably done it. And again, Sandbanks, standard rosé, Ontario wine. Enjoy it. It's like 14 bucks. Okay. I'm
Also,
going to be
though,
honest.
I gotta give a little, but supposedly they bring all of their like grapes or yeah, it's grapes. I just had a little mental block there. In from other areas, like they're not actually Ontario or not where
Well,
we
I
go and
wouldn't
drink
say
it.
they bring all, but they probably it's like most places it's blends, right? So it's not necessarily all of their grapes
Yeah,
local. Some of them are from other areas. And also Canada's not the greatest for certain varietals of wine either.
I know. We should do a Canadian one and do like an ice wine.
Ooh, that's so sweet.
I know, but
I don't,
supposedly sweet wines are coming back.
yeah, I don't know who said that.
The sommelier that did a session with us at Miraval.
Oh, really? Sweet wines are coming back. I don't
Okay,
know.
he
I mean, I
said
don't know. I mean, she might say that. I don't know if I agree with
no, it
that.
was a guy. He was amazing. He was also the beekeeper, but he said the only reason we don't like sweet wines is because of propaganda and marketing. He said, "Did you know rosés were out until like 5, 10 years ago? And it was because rosés were told that it was cheap and bad, and then it made a comeback because of literally marketing." So he's like,
Yeah.
everything you know about wine, he's like, throw it out the window. It's all up to personal taste, what you like,
Right.
and forget what the marketing machine has told you.
Yeah.
And
So
he
I
said
don't,
sweet wines are coming back.
I don't like dislike ice wine because of anything I've seen. Not that I know of. I don't think I'm being unconsciously biased there. I just think that they're too sweet.
Yeah, but and he was probably talking more about, a Riesling. Like there can be some sweeter Rieslings and like people should like them. They're good, but we're told not to like sweet wine. Everyone's like, "What's your driest white?" He's like, "That's bullshit." Some people like dry, a lot of people don't. They just say that to look, you know.
Yeah, that's weird. I do like sweeter wines, like with a
Yeah.
bit of sweet, like I'm a Riesling or a Pinot Grigio. Um, Funny, I had a Chardonnay the other day, and I was like, "Oh, this is shit."
Yeah,
I
I
don't.
don't like Chardonnays
I'm
usually.
like so gone off Chardonnays right now, and it sounds so weird, but I wouldn't even finish the bottle.
Who
Gary
are
drank
you?
it. Gary drank it. I was like, "No, I can't. I can't. I'm not enjoying it. I cannot drink this. I have to waste this." And
See,
well, it
this
was
is
Gary
the
drinking.
funny thing. This is like us in our teens, well, let's say, yeah, like 20s, 30s now. Um, I would never waste wine. I
No,
would drink it no matter what. But now I'm like, drinking isn't good for our bodies. If I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna really fucking enjoy it. I'm not gonna like sludge this down just to get it
no.
finished. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I'd rather just pour it out, like, because I'm not enjoying it. It's just wasteless calories, wasteless sugar in your body, and, like,
Yeah.
all the other bad things that drinking apparently does to you.
Yeah. When it's really good, it's worth it.
Yeah, it's worth it. Yeah, no,
Okay.
cheers to that. I love it. Love a little top up on a oh, it's miserable out here, like, you can
Is
tell by
it?
my clothing versus your clothing, you're all, like, hot and tanned and cute, and then I'm wearing a literal Sherpa sweater. It's
I
like
have the same one.
yeah,
We
I
got
know.
matching
I
BFF
bought it for
ones.
you. Um
So it is really nice here, but next week it's not supposed to be. It goes back down to like 12 degrees. So I think, excuse me, all around the world, the weather is a little off.
Yeah, this weather just needs to get a life. I'm so freaking over it right now. It's
You've had
snowing.
the most mild winter ever. I don't
We had this
feel bad for
beautiful
you.
February, like the
Yeah.
best February in years. And then we get March, and yeah, March is fine, but it's still flipping freezing compared to what it was February, and like cold because we got used to nice, and then it
Yeah.
went bitter cold again. And like it's like flurries right now. It was snowing last night. It's all dissolved at this point. It's not there anymore, but it's just like,
I
can we
mean, we've been
stop
in
it?
Marches where there's still like 5 feet of snow.
I know. So like we're blessed. Like
Perspective.
obviously, I'm glad that that's not the case. But it's like when you get a taste and then it goes,
Oh, I
nope,
know. The
nope,
fall spring is a real thing where
winter's winter's
pull
back.
out a skirt.
I
Mm-mm.
was pulling out all. I put away all the kids' winter gear, and then all of a sudden it snowed one night. I'm like, oh, for fuck's sakes! Gary was all annoyed at me. He had to go like trudging down in the basement and pull stuff out of boxes. Like I thought
I
it
was
was.
just trying to get ahead of it.
I thought we were done. Like I thought we were done with this. You know what I mean? Like
Um,
we're in full spring mode, but clearly not. I
I
just
hope
need
it's
to see.
nice when I come back.
I do too, but that's only in a couple of days. So like, how much? I'll check the weather. I'll let
No,
you
don't. I don't wanna know. I just wanna show up and hope.
show up and hope. Well, like hope you have a jacket when you get
Yeah,
off the
well,
plane.
obviously I do.
Actually, it's not bad. What are you getting in Wednesday or Wednesday?
Tuesday night, Tuesday at like 10 PM.
Yeah, that's actually not that bad. I mean, it'll be cold at 10 p.m., but it's saying like a high of 11 and then go 11, 12, 10, 9, 9, 8. So it's better than
I
what
can
we've been
manage.
getting. Like today it's zero. Like, fuck off.
Oh, yeah.
Zero.
Yeah.
Zero and flurries. Like, get a life. I got the kids' bikes out. I'm not going biking in zero.
Now, are you going for a jog?
Not today. I'll do an
Not
in,
today.
I'll do an indoor activity.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. Or go to Home Sense or something. That's
Walk
different.
them all. That's our age group now. We just
Mall
go to walk
walkers.
indoors.
Mall walkers. It's safe and you don't get snow or rain on you. So, and you
Too
can, you know,
much.
be allured by all the consumerism.
I love that. I don't actually go to malls anymore. I shop online.
I know you love it. The comfort of your own home. Sometimes
I know.
I get the
Watch a
kids out
show
to the
and
mall just to like get them out of the house and it's safe
what
and it's, you know, yeah, they sucker me into
do you
buying.
mean safe? Like, what's safe? When you say safe, what do you mean?
Well, I don't know, like walking around indoors, like they can't really get hurt.
Well, what do
And
you think you're gonna get hit by a car while you're walking outside? Like, I
well, I
don't get
don't
it.
know. Sometimes, like there's nut jobs outside and everything, and it's
There's
safe.
nut jobs in the mall. You're gonna
But
get
it's
like a
like
flasher or some shit.
Sure. It's safe in that, like, and also it's protected from the elements. So if it's really bad weather outside, I'm not going to go walking outside, but I still want to walk or still like kind of get out. So like walking in the mall is great. That's why all the old people do it,
Yep.
right? And
Safe. That's
the
why.
only
Safety
hazard that's
first.
there is like I'm gonna get suckered into buying all kinds of stuff, which I'm not like complaining about. And then we have a little lunch at the food court. So and like Carter just like runs. Like I'm like the mother who just like doesn't give a shit too. Like he's running. The kids are like jumping on the tiles, like the dark
Oh, I
ones.
used to
Like
do that. Don't
yeah,
touch
so
the dark ones or you're in
yeah,
lava.
exactly. So they do that. Like they don't give a shit like who's all
It's
around
so
and
fun.
everything. Except Chloe now. She's more like preteen, like
Oh my god, I was
can't be
talking to my
embarrassed.
niece last night because she had her first dance competition, so
Oh
I
yeah.
watched them on live stream, and then I FaceTime last night to, like, check in. She's a full-blown teenager.
Yeah.
Like, I'm FaceTiming her, and she's like, "Hi, B," and I'm like, "Hi, sweetie." Like, just wanted a little, like, little girl so I'm, like, telling her how good she did for talking. She's on her phone over here because 'cause I'm FaceTiming on her mom's phone. She's doing stuff, and I'm like, "Are you busy? Like, we can talk another time." She's like, "No, no, no, I'm just trying to send something." But, like, I was like, "It's
You're already
drastic."
being iced. You're being iced
I know,
already.
like, I'm like, "I'm no longer cool Auntie B. I'm now the aunt that's just annoying."
Just a family member who's just
Yeah.
encroaching on her shit.
I mean, I gotta find, like, I gotta, like, show off my clothes or something because I feel like that's the only thing that they're gonna be like, "Oh,
Yeah, you do that with Chloe any day. She's
yeah,
all over it.
yeah,
All about
yeah."
the things you can brings.
Things
Anywho,
you could
let's close this one off. I think we've given people enough to think about or to listen to.
what did you rate this one again?
Oh my god, like it's just the old Sandbanks. Gotta love it any
Like a
time of the year.
5?
A 5? Well, that's harsh. At least give it. I like this wine. I'd
So
give
you
it
give
an
it a
8.
7.
I'd give it an 8 because I can drink it
Oh, hot
anytime.
damn.
I can drink it anytime. It's not too sweet. It goes
Okay.
down smooth. I can drink it winter, summer. I don't care.
I like it.
Tasty.
I like it.
Good price point.
Okay, well, I love you. I hope that you're living a mellow, stress-free life, and, I will see you soon.
Bye, everyone.